Jake Morrison stepped out of the transport shuttle and looked up at the massive crystal tower that reached toward the purple sky of Nexus Prime. The Galactic Council building was bigger than anything on Earth, with walls that sparkled like diamonds in the alien sunlight. After 15 years as humanity's top diplomat, Jake still felt small when he walked through its enormous doors. The halls buzzed with activity as creatures from across the galaxy hurried past him. Tall, thin beings with blue skin walked alongside short, furry aliens with 6 arms. Some floated in the air, others crawled on multiple legs. Jake had learned to recognize most of the species over the years, but new ones still surprised him sometimes. "Ambassador Morrison," called a familiar voice. Jake turned to see Amy Foster, his military aide, approaching with quick steps. Her uniform was crisp and her expression was serious. "The emergency session starts in 30 minutes. Dr. Walsh is already reviewing the latest intelligence reports." Jake nodded and followed Amy through the crowded corridors. The other diplomats he passed gave him respectful nods. For 15 years, humanity had built a reputation as the galaxy's peacemakers. When 2 species had a dispute, they called for human mediators. When trade wars threatened to become real wars, human diplomats found solutions that worked for everyone. They reached the human delegation's private chambers, where Dr. Kevin Walsh was hunched over a holographic display showing star maps and battle reports. The doctor looked up as Jake entered, his face grim. "The situation is worse than we thought," Kevin said, pointing to red markers scattered across the star map. "The Zephyrians have taken 12 more worlds in the past month. They're moving faster than anyone expected." Jake studied the map. Each red marker represented millions of lives under Zephyrian control. The insect-like warriors had been expanding their empire for years, but recently their conquest had accelerated. They moved like a swarm of locusts, consuming everything in their path. "What about the Melodians?" Jake asked, though he already feared the answer. Kevin's expression darkened. 3 of their colony worlds are under siege. The Zephyrians are demanding complete surrender within 72 hours. If the Melodians refuse, the Zephyrians promise to destroy every city from orbit. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. The Melodians were healers and philosophers, a gentle species that had never harmed anyone. Their medical knowledge had saved countless lives across the galaxy. The thought of their peaceful cities burning made Jake's hands clench into fists. "Sir," Amy said quietly, "the other species are already proposing their usual solutions. Economic, sanctions, trade embargoes, diplomatic protests, the same things that have failed every time." Jake walked to the large window that looked out over the council chambers. Through the transparent walls, he could see hundreds of delegates taking their seats in the circular assembly hall. Representatives from the Altrurian hegemony sat in their flowing robes, discussing peaceful solutions with the crystal beings of the Silicon Collective. The reptilian Chronosians argued with the floating energy forms of the Ethereal Union. For 15 years, Jake had sat in those chambers and found ways to avoid war. He had negotiated treaties, arranged compromises, and convinced aggressive species to settle their differences through trade instead of battle. The galaxy had praised humanity's wisdom and peaceful nature. But Jake knew something the other species did not. Humanity's peaceful reputation was carefully planned. While other diplomats saw humans as natural mediators, Jake's people had been studying every military engagement, every tactical doctrine, and every strategic weakness in the galaxy. What looked like peaceful observation was actually the most comprehensive intelligence-gathering operation in galactic history. The Zephyrians attacked a medical research station yesterday. Kevin continued reading from his reports. 200 Melodian doctors and their families were killed. The survivors are being held as prisoners. Jake's jaw tightened. He had met some of those doctors during previous diplomatic missions. They were kind beings who had dedicated their lives to healing others. The thought of them suffering under Zephyrian brutality made his decision easier. Amy noticed the change in her commander's expression. After working with Jake for 8 years, she could read his moods better than anyone. "Sir, what are your orders?" Jake turned from the window and looked at his 2 trusted advisors. Kevin Walsh had been analyzing galactic military data for over a decade. Amy Foster had been quietly building relationships with military leaders from dozens of species. Both of them knew that this moment had been coming for years. "The charade ends today," Jake said simply. "No more peaceful solutions. No more compromise. The galaxy has forgotten that sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to hit back harder than they can hit you." Kevin and Amy exchanged glances. They had both seen Jake's anger before, but never like this. The man who had spent 15 years preaching peace was ready for war. "Are you sure about this, sir?" Amy asked. "Once we reveal our true capabilities, there's no going back. The other species will never see humanity the same way again." Jake nodded slowly. "Good. Maybe it's time they learned that our desire for peace comes from strength, not weakness. The Zephyrians have made their choice. Now we make ours." The sound of chimes echoed through the building, calling all delegates to the emergency session. Jake straightened his formal diplomatic jacket and checked his appearance in the mirror. This would be the last time he dressed as a peaceful mediator. Tomorrow, the galaxy would know humanity's true face. "Gentlemen, let's go make history," Jake said, and walked toward the door that would lead him to the most important speech of his career. The council chambers fell silent as Jake Morrison stood up from his seat. All eyes turned to the human delegation section, where the man who had spent 15 years solving problems through peaceful means now prepared to say words that would change everything. Chancellor Vextar, the huge reptilian leader of the council, gestured toward Jake with one of his clawed hands. "The delegate from Earth may speak," he said in his deep, rumbling voice. Jake walked slowly to the speaking platform in the center of the circular chamber. His footsteps echoed in the vast space as hundreds of alien beings watched him. Many expected another clever compromise, another peaceful solution that would somehow make everyone happy. "Honored delegates," Jake began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's sound system. "For 3 hours, we have listened to speeches about economic pressure and trade restrictions. We have heard calls for diplomatic isolation and cultural boycotts." He paused, letting his words sink in. Several delegates nodded, thinking he was about to build on their suggestions. "All of these ideas have one thing in common," Jake continued, his voice growing harder. "They have all failed before. The Zephyrians do not care about our trade restrictions. They laugh at our diplomatic protests. While we debate, they conquer." A murmur of surprise rippled through the chamber. This was not the usual human approach. "Ambassador." Thelena of the Altrurian hegemony stood up, her flowing robe shimmering in the chamber's light. "Surely Ambassador Morrison is not suggesting we abandon our commitment to peaceful resolution?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. Jake looked directly at her, his expression grim. "I am suggesting exactly that, Ambassador. The Zephyrians have shown us who they are. They are predators who understand only one language: force." The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Species that had grown comfortable with human mediation suddenly faced something they had never seen before. A human diplomat calling for war. "The time for half measures is over," Jake continued, raising his voice above the noise. "Yesterday, the Zephyrians destroyed a medical research station. 200 Melodian doctors and their families are dead. Their crime was healing the sick and wounded." He pressed a control on his wrist device. A holographic image appeared above the chamber, showing the wreckage of the destroyed station. Bodies floated in space among the twisted metal and broken equipment. "These were not soldiers," Jake said, his voice filled with cold anger. "These were healers, teachers, children, and the Zephyrians killed them because it was easier than allowing them to live." The image changed, showing surveillance footage of Zephyrian forces attacking defenseless colonies. The insect-like warriors moved with brutal efficiency, destroying everything in their path. Dr. Walsh stepped forward from the human delegation area, carrying a portable data projector. "If I may, Ambassador," he said quietly. Jake nodded and Kevin activated the device. New holographic displays filled the air above the chamber, showing detailed tactical analyses and intelligence reports that made several military leaders gasp. "For 15 years, Jake said as the data scrolled past, humanity has served as mediators and peacekeepers in this galaxy. During that time, we have observed, we have studied, we have learned. The displays showed human intelligence networks that reached into every corner of known space. Battle analyses that broke down the tactical doctrines of dozens of species. Detailed studies of military technologies and strategic weaknesses that made even the warlike Chronosians look impressed. We know how the Zephyrians fight, Jake continued. We know their battle patterns, their supply lines, their command structure. We know which worlds they will target next, and we know how to stop them. Commander Zoldan of the Velkari Trade. Federation stood up, his forearms gesturing in confusion. Are you saying that humans have been spying on us for 15 years? We have been learning, Jake replied simply. Every diplomatic mission was also a chance to understand how different species approach warfare. Every trade negotiation taught us about production capabilities and resource flows. Every cultural exchange showed us how societies organize for conflict. Amy Foster stepped forward, activating another projector. This one showed footage that no one in the chamber had ever seen before. Human military exercises featuring ships that could disappear from sensors, weapons that adapted to any defense, and tactics that combined conventional warfare with psychological operations in ways that made the audience nervous. While other species focused on their internal affairs, Jake said, humanity has been preparing for the day when peaceful solutions would not be enough. That day is today. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the floating energy beings of the ethereal union had stopped their constant humming. The Melodian colonies have 72 hours before the Zephyrians destroy them, Jake continued. We will not let that happen. Humanity formally declares its intention to intervene militarily in this conflict. Chancellor Vextar's reptilian eyes widened. Ambassador Morrison, are you declaring war on behalf of humanity? I am declaring that humanity will no longer stand by while innocents are slaughtered, Jake replied. The Zephyrians want war. They have been waging war for years while we pretended that words would stop them. Now they will discover what war looks like when they face an enemy that has been preparing for 15 years. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from dozens of species. Any nation that wishes to stand with us in defense of the innocent is welcome to join. Any that choose neutrality, we understand. But make no mistake about our intentions. Jake's final words echoed through the silent chamber. The age of unopposed aggression ends today. The Zephyrians will learn that there are consequences for their actions, and the galaxy will learn that humanity's desire for peace has always been backed by our ability to wage war. The silence that followed was absolute. For the first time in galactic history, the species known for peaceful mediation had just declared their readiness for battle. And from the intelligence they had displayed, it was clear that this was not an empty threat. Jake returned to his seat, leaving the chamber to process what they had just witnessed. The galaxy's understanding of humanity had just changed forever. The emergency session continued through the night as species after species demanded answers from the human delegation. Jake Morrison sat calmly in his chair while alien voices rose in confusion, fear, and anger around him. Some delegates wanted to know how long humanity had been deceiving them. Others worried about what humans might do with their hidden military power. Commander Zoldan of the Velkari Trade Federation approached Jake during a break in the proceedings. The four-armed alien's security background made him more direct than most diplomats. Ambassador Morrison, Zoldan said quietly, my people need to understand the true extent of human capabilities. Will you meet with our military leaders? Jake considered the request. He had expected this moment to come eventually. Yes, but I want all species represented. If we're going to reveal the truth, everyone should hear it at the same time. 2 hours later, Jake found himself in a secure conference room deep inside the council station. Military leaders and intelligence chiefs from 12 different species sat around a curved table. The room's walls were lined with devices that prevented any electronic surveillance, ensuring their conversation would remain private. General Lisa Hamilton appeared as a hologram at one end of the table. The head of Earth's Strategic Command looked tired but determined. Her uniform displayed medals from conflicts most of the galaxy had never heard of. Before we begin, Jake said, looking around the table, I want to make something clear. Everything we're about to tell you has been declassified by Earth Command specifically for this meeting. We're sharing this information because the galaxy faces a real threat, not because we want to intimidate anyone. Commander Zoldan leaned forward. How long has humanity been preparing for war? Since the day we joined the Galactic Council, General Hamilton answered from her hologram. Not because we wanted war, but because we understood that peace requires the ability to defend it. Dr. Walsh activated a display showing Earth's military development over the past 15 years. The progression was startling. What had begun as basic human technology had evolved into something that combined the best innovations from every species in the galaxy. Every time we mediated a dispute, we learned something new, Jake explained. When the Chronosians fought, the Silicon Collective 5 years ago, we studied both sides' tactics. When the Altrurians developed their new logistics systems, we analyzed how they could be applied to military operations. The Chronosian general, a massive reptile named Braktar, slammed his fist on the table. You used our conflicts as training. Exercises? We used your conflicts as learning opportunities, Jake replied calmly. The galaxy has been our military academy. Every battle taught us something. Every weapon system showed us new possibilities. Every strategy revealed strengths and weaknesses we could adapt or exploit. General Hamilton brought up a new display showing human war game simulations. The assembled military leaders watched in growing amazement as human computers ran through thousands of battle scenarios using accurate data from every species present. We know exactly how Zephyrian swarm tactics work, Hamilton said. We've run over 10,000 simulations against their battle patterns. We know how to counter their strategies, disrupt their communications, and exploit their weaknesses. The floating energy being representing the ethereal union pulsed with different colors as it processed this information. You have studied us all as potential enemies? It asked, its voice like wind through crystals. We have studied you all as potential allies, Jake corrected. We needed to understand how every species fights so we could work together effectively. The simulations we've run aren't just human forces against various enemies. They're coalition forces combining human tactics with alien technologies and capabilities. Kevin Walsh stepped forward with another data pad. We've identified the optimal force composition for defeating Zephyrian expansion, human ships providing command and control, Chronosian assault forces for ground operations, Altrurian logistics networks for supply, and Silicon Collective electronic warfare capabilities. Commander Zoldan's four eyes narrowed. And if we refuse to cooperate, what then? The question hung in the air like a threat. Everyone knew what he was really asking. If humanity could defeat the Zephyrians, what was to stop them from conquering everyone else? Jake met the commander's gaze without flinching. Then we fight the Zephyrians alone and accept whatever losses that brings. But we will not allow genocide to continue while we have the power to stop it. That's not what he meant, General Braktar growled. He wants to know if you plan to conquer the rest of us after you finish with the Zephyrians. The room fell silent. This was the question every species feared to ask but needed to know. Jake looked around the table at faces both alien and familiar, all waiting for his answer. Conquest was never our goal, Jake said finally. If we wanted to rule the galaxy, we would have started 15 years ago when we first developed the capability. Instead, we chose to serve as mediators and peacekeepers. General Hamilton nodded from her hologram. The galaxy is more valuable as a community of independent worlds than as a human empire. Our analysis shows that cooperation produces better outcomes than domination for everyone involved, including humanity. Dr. Walsh activated one final display, showing trade flows, resource distribution, and economic projections. A free galaxy with open trade benefits Earth more than a conquered galaxy with enforced tribute. We prefer customers to slaves. The ethereal union representative pulsed bright blue. Your logic is sound, but logic can change. What guarantee do we have that humanity will not become tomorrow's Zephyrian empire? Jake stood up slowly, his expression serious. The same guarantee you have for any species with military power. None. But consider this. In 15 years of hiding our capabilities. We never used them for conquest. We never threatened anyone. We never demanded special treatment or tribute. He paused, letting his words sink in. We revealed our military strength only when faced with genocide. That should tell you something about our intentions. Commander Zoldan was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. If humanity wanted to conquer us, you would have done it already. The fact that you're sitting here asking for cooperation, instead of demanding surrender, suggests your intentions are genuine. General Braktar grunted agreement. Warriors recognize warriors. These humans fight for others, not for themselves. That is, honorable. The meeting continued for several more hours as military leaders discussed tactics, logistics, and coordination. By the time it ended, the foundation of an unprecedented military alliance had been laid. As the alien delegates filed out of the room, Jake remained behind with General Hamilton's hologram. The weight of what they had started was finally sinking in. No going back now, Hamilton said quietly. No, Jake agreed. But maybe that's not a bad thing. The galaxy needed to know who we really are eventually. The age of human deception was over. The age of human leadership was about to begin. Within 6 hours of the military meeting, everything began to change. Jake Morrison stood in the human delegation's communications center, watching as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Species that had remained neutral for centuries were suddenly choosing sides. The first surprise came from Ambassador Chiron of the Ethereal Union. The floating energy being materialized in the communication chamber, pulsing with colors that Jake had learned to recognize as determination. The Ethereal Union will join your coalition, Chiron announced, their voice like singing crystals. We have touched the minds of your delegation. Your desire for peace is genuine, though your methods are more direct than we expected. Jake felt relief wash over him. The Ethereal Union's telepathic abilities were respected throughout the galaxy. Their endorsement of human intentions would carry weight with other species. Dr. Walsh looked up from his data screens. Ambassador, we're receiving confirmation from the Altrurian hegemony. Despite their pacifist philosophy, they're offering full logistical support. Ambassador Thalana appeared on the main communication screen, her usual calm expression replaced by grim resolve. We have debated through the night, she said. Peace protected by strength is preferable to peace destroyed by inaction. The Altrurian merchant fleet and supply networks are at your disposal. Amy Foster entered the chamber carrying a datapad with updated fleet positions. Sir, Captain Roy Stevens has arrived with the advance squadron. They're requesting permission to decloak and dock with the station. Jake nodded. Grant permission. It's time the galaxy saw what human ships actually look like. Outside the massive windows of Nexus Prime Station, space began to shimmer. One by one, human warships materialized from apparent nothingness, their sleek hulls reflecting the light of the system's twin suns. The ships were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before, combining human engineering with technology adapted from 15 years of studying every species' innovations. The reaction from other delegates was immediate. Communication channels buzzed with shocked conversations as species realized that humanity had been building a fleet in complete secrecy. Some voices carried fear, others admiration, but all carried surprise. Captain Stevens appeared on the communication screen, his weathered face showing the confidence of a veteran commander. Ambassador Morrison, the Earth Defense Corps Advance Fleet is ready for operations. Admiral Clark is en route with the main battle group. Jake felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders. For 15 years, he had been a diplomat who prevented wars. Now he was helping to plan one. The coalition grew throughout the day. The scholarly librarian collective offered their vast databases and analytical capabilities. The nomadic wanderer clans, who rarely involved themselves in galactic politics, provided intelligence on remote star systems and hidden hyperspace routes that could give the coalition a strategic advantage. Even some traditional enemies found themselves on the same side. The militaristic Chronosians and the technological Silicon Collective agreed to coordinate their forces under human command, something that would have been impossible just days before. But Jake's greatest challenge was not building the coalition. It was preventing it from becoming a tool of revenge. General Braktar stormed into the planning session, his massive reptilian form radiating anger. "The Zephyrians have been our enemies for 300 years, he growled. "This is our chance to end their threat permanently. We should strike at their homeworlds, destroy their ability to make war forever." Several other military leaders nodded agreement. Commander Zoldan's forearms gestured emphatically as he spoke. "The Velkari have lost dozens of trade ships to Zephyrian raiders. Why should we show mercy to those who have shown none?" Jake stood up slowly, his voice cutting through the angry voices. "Because the moment we become the monsters we're fighting, we lose everything we're trying to protect." The room fell silent. Jake looked around the table at faces both human and alien, all focused on him. "We fight to stop aggression, not to commit it," he continued. "The Zephyrians have conquered innocent worlds and killed peaceful people. If we respond by doing the same thing to them, we become exactly what they are." Dr. Walsh activated a holographic display showing the Zephyrian Empire's territory. Red zones marked military targets, while green zones showed civilian populations. "Our objective is to stop Zephyrian expansion and force the return of conquered territories," Jake explained. "We will target their military forces, their command structures, and their supply lines. We will not target their civilian populations." General Braktar's eyes narrowed. "You show weakness to an enemy that deserves none. I show strength," Jake replied firmly. "Anyone can destroy cities and kill innocents. It takes real strength to win a war while maintaining your principles." Amy Foster stepped forward with new intelligence reports. "Sir, we're receiving word that several neutral species are watching our preparations carefully. How we conduct this war will determine whether they see us as liberators or as conquerors." Jake nodded. The galaxy was indeed watching. Every decision the coalition made would be judged by hundreds of species who would decide whether to support or oppose human leadership in the future. Admiral Susan Clark's image appeared on the main screen as her flagship dropped out of hyperspace. The veteran officer's presence brought immediate calm to the planning session. "Admiral Clark," Jake said, "you've reviewed our rules of engagement?" "I have, Ambassador. My fleet commanders understand that we're fighting to protect the innocent, not to create new victims. We'll hit them hard, but we'll hit them clean." Clark's main battle group was impressive even by galactic standards. The ships represented the culmination of human military evolution, incorporating lessons learned from studying every major conflict in recent galactic history. As the coalition forces assembled, Jake prepared for one final address to the Galactic Council. The time for preparation was ending. The time for action had begun. Standing before the communication array that would broadcast his words across the galaxy, Jake felt the weight of history on his shoulders. What happened next would determine not just the fate of the Melodian colonies, but the future of galactic civilization itself. "This is Ambassador Morrison to all coalition forces," he began. "Today we end the era of unopposed aggression. Tomorrow, we begin building a galaxy where strength serves justice, not tyranny." The war that would reshape the galaxy was about to begin. 18 months after Jake Morrison's declaration of war, the galaxy had changed forever. The Zephyrian Empire, which had seemed unstoppable just 2 years before, now existed only within their original borders. Their conquered territories had been liberated, their military forces scattered, and their leadership forced to accept terms they had never imagined possible. Jake stood in his new office overlooking the rebuilt council chambers, watching as representatives from 47 new member species took their seats. These were worlds that had been freed from various oppressive regimes during the Coalition's campaigns. The Galactic Council had grown from a talking forum into a real government with the power to enforce peace. The war itself had been unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human tactical doctrine proved devastatingly effective against traditional military thinking. Where other species had developed rigid battle plans over thousands of years, humans had studied flexibility as a weapon itself. Admiral Clark's forces demonstrated something that shocked even experienced military leaders. Human tactics evolved, during battle, changing in real time based on enemy responses. When Zephyrian swarm attacks failed against adaptive human defenses, the insect warriors found themselves fighting an enemy that learned faster than they could adapt. Dr. Walsh entered the office carrying his daily intelligence briefing. Even in peacetime, the galaxy required constant monitoring. Ambassador, we have reports from the outer sectors. 3 different aggressive species are testing our response times. Jake turned from the window. His title had changed from ambassador to director of conflict resolution, a position that combined diplomatic authority with military oversight. What's our response time looking like? Admiral Clark's peacekeeping fleets are responding within 6 hours to any aggression, Walsh reported. The message is getting through. Attack innocent worlds and face immediate retaliation from coalition forces. Amy Foster joined them, now wearing the uniform of a full colonel. Her promotion reflected humanity's new role in galactic security. Sir, General Hamilton is requesting approval for the new rapid response protocol. She wants to station mixed species task forces in key systems. Jake reviewed the proposal on his datapad. The plan called for small but powerful fleets positioned throughout the galaxy, ready to respond to any aggression within hours instead of days. Each task force would include human command ships, Chronosian assault forces, Altrurian logistics support, and technology from a dozen other species. Approved, Jake said. But make sure every task force includes representatives from at least 5 different species. This needs to be seen as galactic peacekeeping, not human enforcement. The success of the coalition had created its own challenges. Some species worried that humanity was becoming too powerful, while others wanted to rely entirely on human protection instead of building their own defenses. Jake spent much of his time balancing these concerns. The Zephyrian surrender had been the war's turning point, but not its end. Jake's decision to offer reasonable terms instead of demanding total destruction had surprised both allies and enemies. When Zephyrian High Command offered to surrender, many coalition members had wanted to demand territory and reparations that would cripple the insect empire forever. Jake's refusal had shocked even his own staff. "We fought to stop aggression, not to create new injustices," he had told the coalition leaders. The Zephyrians will return conquered territories and provide reasonable reparations to their victims, but they keep their sovereign space and their dignity. That decision had changed how the entire galaxy viewed the coalition. Instead of conquerors seeking revenge, they had proven themselves to be liberators who fought for justice rather than dominance. General Hamilton appeared on the office communication screen, calling from Earth's Strategic Command. "Jake, we need to discuss the situation in the Vega sector. The Raider clans are getting bold again." "What's the assessment?" Jake asked. "They're testing us," Hamilton replied. "Small attacks on merchant ships, nothing that would normally trigger a full response. They want to see if we'll react to minor aggression the same way we react to major threats." Jake considered this. The galaxy was watching every decision the coalition made. Respond too aggressively and they would be seen as bullies. Respond too weakly and every minor aggressor would think they could get away with small-scale attacks. Send a single task force, Jake decided. But make sure it includes the new adaptive weapon systems. Let them see what happens when they face technology that learns from their tactics in real time. Amy nodded and began sending orders. The rapid response protocol was being tested daily as various species probed for weaknesses in the new galactic order. Colonel Foster looked up from her communication device. "Sir, we're receiving a request from the Melodian colonies. They want to establish a memorial for the medical station that was destroyed. They're asking for coalition protection during the ceremony." Jake smiled. The Melodians were thriving again, their colonies rebuilt and their medical research advancing faster than ever. The species that had nearly been wiped out was now leading galactic efforts to develop new healing technologies. Approved. And make sure Admiral Clark attends personally. The galaxy needs to see that we remember why we fought this war. Dr. Walsh brought up a holographic display showing current galactic stability ratings. Green zones indicated peaceful, stable regions. Yellow zones showed areas of minor tension. Red zones marked active conflicts requiring intervention. The overall picture is encouraging, Walsh reported. We have fewer active conflicts now than at any time in recorded galactic history. The threat of immediate coalition response is making aggressive species think twice before starting trouble. Jake studied the display. Most of the galaxy showed green or yellow, with only a few small red zones in remote sectors. It was progress, but he knew it was fragile progress that required constant attention. A message alert chimed on his desk. The communication came from Chancellor Vextar, requesting a private meeting about expanding council enforcement powers. Jake accepted the meeting, knowing that every expansion of galactic government required careful consideration. As the days on work continued, Jake reflected on how much had changed since his angry declaration in the council chambers. Humanity had revealed its true nature to the galaxy and found acceptance rather than fear. Other species had learned that human strength came with human responsibility. Outside his window, ships from dozens of different worlds moved through Nexus Prime's traffic patterns. Human vessels worked alongside alien designs in the daily business of galactic civilization. The sight still amazed him sometimes. Amy entered with the final reports of the day. Sir, the Wanderer clans are reporting unusual activity in the frontier sectors. Unknown ships using technology we haven't seen before. Jake nodded. The galaxy was vast, and there were always new challenges appearing on its edges. But now those challenges would face a unified response from species that had learned to work together. Schedule a briefing for tomorrow morning, Jake said, and send word to Admiral Clark. It looks like our peacekeeping forces are about to get another test. The age of human diplomacy had ended with his declaration of war. The age of galactic cooperation had begun with the peace that followed.